our people were being reckless. They were just sinning left and right, and they were literally using animals like garbage. They would commit a sin, and then like they would lie on you, and then they would kill an animal to be like, oh, I'm about to lie, so let me kill this animal so I don't die immediately. That's what people were doing. Or they would say, or it would be, they're mad at this person, so they would kill an animal because they knew they were about to go fight somebody and they didn't want the punishment to fall on them, so they go kill an animal. They were doing stuff like that. They were just throwing away animals and killing them so that they wouldn't be penalized for sinning. That is wicked. That is evil. And the nation of Israel also kept following after what the other nations were doing. Now, the other nations do not keep the commandments. And let me give you an example. These are fringes. We are commanded in Numbers, in the book of Numbers, we are commanded to wear fringes on the hem of our garments. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a hem right here, which the hem is at the bottom. It's the stitching at the bottom of the fabric. We are commanded to wear fringes with a ribband of blue. Now, I've sewn these on, so it has a ribbon. A ribbon is a ribbon. So it has a ribbon of blue sewn onto here, and there are fringes. Fringes are a fabric that hangs. So basically, you can make your own fringes. You can make them or buy them. Like for instance, if you have your own fabric and you want to make fringes on your fabric, you can do that. But I bought these, and you can sew it onto the fabric, onto the end, onto the hem, and that's your fringes with a ribband of blue. And I made these ones light blue specifically so that the color of the fringes did not bleed into the scarf, because a lot of the fringes, when you go and get them, they're usually royal blue or a navy blue or a dark blue. If I would have gotten that color, it might have bled into this. So I specifically got a lighter blue so that it would match with this, and I could keep wearing it with the color coordination that's going on right here. So that's why I picked this color for this. But normally I would wear, in most cases, I would wear this color, which is, let me put it on here so you can see it, which is a darker blue. This is more of a navy blue. It's a darker blue. It just says blue. It didn't specify, in the Bible, it didn't specify what color blue. And then this is a royal blue. So this is a lighter blue color, a royal blue. And then let me show you these other fringes that I got. And so these are another shade of blue. These fringes right here are another shade of blue. So they go on the hem of your garment biblically. So we are commanded in the Bible that our garments have fringes and a ribbon of blue. And so the other nations do not wear fringes with a ribbon of blue because God gave that commandment to us. And so when the nation of Israel started looking at other nations and seeing how they dress, the Israelites, our people, the Jews, the Hebrews, our people of the Bible, started going after the other people that weren't wearing fringes. And that's how we got away from the tradition of wearing fringes. But it is a biblical commandment that we are required to keep. Now, over the years, by our people continuously disobeying God and following after the other nations and doing what they're doing, the other nations do not keep our high holy days or do anything that God told us to do. And so in following the other nations, the power that we had, we used to be kings and queens in this earth, God's people. And so what happened was when we stopped following God's ways, the power and the sovereignty that we had inadvertently transferred to our enemies. And initially our people probably didn't know that would happen, but prophets have come over the years and warned our people about what would happen if we did not obey the Lord. And prophets have gone forth and told the other nations that you see that nation that's below you, you're going to be below them if you stop keeping the commandments. And our nation stopped keeping the commandments. That's how we went into Egyptian captivity. That's how it happened. And so we were under Egyptian captivity for many years, and we cried out to God over and over because of the slavery and the mistreatment and everything that we suffered at the hands of the Egyptians. So God came to save us. And what happened was during Passover, God gave a commandment. He told us things to do, which one of them was to slay a lamb, to kill it, and to put the blood of the lamb on the doorpost, the top, and on the sides of the doors. This is what we were to do for God to preserve us. And also, what he told us to do is he told us to prepare a special meal, which was called the Passover feast. And the way he gave us very specific instructions on how we were to keep it. We were to kill a lamb. We were to eat that lamb on the same day, no leftovers the next day. We were to roast the lamb over fire. Don't boil it. You have to roast it. Only roast it over fire. And you cook it without seasonings. This meal was meant to remind us of the bitterness of captivity and how God released us from that. Also, we were to eat this meal with bitter herbs, only with bitter herbs and with unleavened bread. That meant that the bread could not have any leavening agent or rising agent that caused it to rise. It had to be an unleavened bread. And so these were the specific instructions that he told us to give. We kept those commandments. We kept the instructions, and he released us. He freed us from captivity. And then the Lord told us to keep this feast every year throughout our generations forever. And we are still alive, and we are still generating, and we are to keep this commandment forever. And so therefore, let us keep the feast, not with the old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. That's how we're supposed to keep it. And what the Passover is supposed to do while we're keeping it is we are to clear our houses of all leavened foods. So that means food that has already been prepared with a leavening agent. So let's say, for instance, if you have baking soda, just baking soda sitting in your house, that's fine. But when it's inside of a food, like you have it inside of cookies, you got to throw that out. Any leavening agent that's used in food, you have to throw that out during Passover. And so, for instance, if you have yeast in your house, throw that out because that's used for cooking. So any leavening agent that's in your home that you use to put into food and cook it to leaven, that's what you're supposed to throw out. And if you cookies, cakes, crackers that have leavening in them, donuts, breads, any food that has a leavening agent, and you need to go through your pantry, your cabinets, every place that you store food, even your bags, if you carry a backpack, go through all those and clear out all leavened foods from your house during Passover. It's just for during the time of Passover for those 8 days. Passover is 8 days. In the Bible, it says 7 days. That's when we're in the land of Israel dwelling as our place of rest. But when we are out in the diaspora, as we are right now, we are to keep the feast for 8 days. So during those 8 days, that is when we are to clear our house before the feast starts. So before you begin to celebrate it, you are to clear your house out of all leavened foods and then begin the Passover. The Passover is the first night. So the first night is where you have that Passover feast that the Lord has instructed. Then after that Passover, that from when the sun sets on the first day of Passover till the next day, that's 24 hours, that's Passover. Then after that first day, then so that's day 1. Then the next 7 days after that, so it's a total of 8 days. The next 7 days after that is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And so when the day 1 of the Feast of Unleavened Bread starts, by that time, you should have already thrown out any leftovers of the Passover lamb. So on the day of Passover, that night when you're consuming the Passover, Passover starts when the sun goes down. That's when you have the Passover meal. You're to eat all of the lamb on that night. If there's any lamb left over, you throw it away. It actually says to destroy it by fire. You put it in the fire and burn it up in the fire. So if you have a grill, put that outside on the grill, and that's how you dispose of the remaining portions of the Passover lamb. So the way that you dispose of the remaining portions of the Passover lamb is you consume it by fire. So put it on a grill, let the grill burn it up, or in your fireplace. If you have a fireplace, put it in your fireplace, burn it up that way, and it has to be destroyed by fire. Then when you begin the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, there should be no more lamb in the house. So for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, 7 days of feasting on unleavened bread and clean foods. So each of those 7 days, you need to be having some form of unleavened bread. It could be wraps, like, those flat bread wraps. Now, you do need to check the ingredients if you buy it from the store, because some of those do have a leavening agent. You need to make sure there's no yeast in there, no rising agent at all. And if you don't know if it's a rising agent and you see an ingredient, look it up. Look it up when you're at the store on your phone. Look it up before you buy it, and then you'll know. I'm going to have a list of common agents that are used to cause breads to rise, leavening agents. I'm going to have a list of those where I post this video. So that'll be there to help you. Okay, so the first day, Passover, that is actually a Sabbath. So a Sabbath day is a day that is dedicated to the Lord. He has called it holy, and that's his Sabbath. Whenever we have a feast day, the first day is always a Sabbath, every last one of our high holy days. And the ones that are more than one day are a Sabbath. The ones that do not fall on a Saturday, those ones we can cook. But on Passover, the only thing that you can cook is the lamb. So on a typical Saturday Sabbath, there is no cooking, there's no buying, there's no selling. You only rest. But on Passover, we have to cook the lamb. So that's the only thing that can be cooked. So for the unleavened bread, you can either buy it from the store or cook it before the sun goes down, because after the sun goes down, the only thing that you're permitted to cook is the lamb. And for the herbs, those will not be cooked, because we're eating the herbs. They're bitter herbs. We're just eating those. And so I'll also have a list of bitter herbs next to where I post this video. One example of a bitter herb is rosemary. So that just gives you an example. Okay, so since day one of Passover is a Sabbath, what you want to do is get all your cooking done before, except for the lamb. Get the bread cooked before sunset, and then keep the Passover. So day one is the Passover, and it's a Sabbath. Day two is the beginning of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Day two, you can cook as long as it doesn't fall on a Saturday, because the Lord's Sabbath supersedes every other day. So when it's a Saturday Sabbath, we can't cook regardless. So as long as day two does not fall on a Saturday, you can cook, and you can have your unleavened bread cooked on that day and the rest of the days, except for a day that falls on a Saturday. And then also the last day, no matter what day it falls on, even if it falls on a Tuesday, on the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread is always a Sabbath. You have to observe it as a Sabbath, which means you do not cook on the last day. So the last day is a Sabbath of rest, which means you rest on that day. You don't buy or sell anything, and you stay home and rest. That's a Sabbath. You don't buy or sell anything. You stay home and you rest. That's a Sabbath. And a Sabbath is always biblically, it's always from when the sun goes down on this day until the sun goes down on the next day. That's 24 hours. That's a Sabbath, and that's when a day starts in the Bible. It's not according to the calendar. The calendars were created to throw the people of God off from our commandments. So we have to do what the Bible says as far as our days and times. Okay, let me give you an example of some leavened foods. So it's foods that have yeast. It's breads, cookies, cakes, chips, crackers, any kind of foods that have baking soda in them, baking powder, yeast, fermentation, sourdough, ammonium carbonate, raising agents. Get rid of those before the feast. And so what God did to deliver us during the Passover in the Bible, biblically, is while we were keeping the Passover feast, God sent a plague. He actually sent 10. He actually sent 10 plagues into the land of Egypt to compel the Egyptians to release us from captivity. But the Lord purposely hardened Pharaoh's heart to cause him to not release us so that God could show his strong power, to show how strong and mighty he was over all of the Egyptians. Because at that time, the Egyptians were the strongest nation in the world in people's eyes. So when God brought down the Egyptians,